Welcome back to Bleav in Softball. I'm your host, Jenna Becerra, and it's that time of year again. Mother's Day is this weekend, and we have some fun and relatable content teed up for today. But before we jump in, reminders for ways to keep up with the show. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. Subscribe to Bleav in Softball on YouTube and actually watch the videos as well. All right, so let's go through today's order. First, we'll cover our bases as usual. I'll share some news and updates, some big ones today. And then we'll head into today's interview. One of my favorite interviews ever, just a little biased, just so happens to be my mom. And she's been there through every moment of my softball journey and has a really cool perspective. And I think softball moms are so special, so I'm excited to share it. And then we'll end things with the Foul Tip of the Week, our new segment this season where we share tips to help us get better. All right, let's get started. Covering our bases. In the big news, the NCAA announced potential hosting sites for postseason softball. And it's a little different this year, right? Like due to COVID, they had to do predetermined sites because there are too many protocols. They have to make sure they have the facilities that have the space and the resources to accommodate this level of competition and also the broadcasts that go with it. So there are 20 sites total. They will select 16, which will be announced during the selection show on May 16th. So that's going to be our first round of regionals. We'll find out soon. But not surprisingly, they're all in the Power 5. Makes sense because they have the stadiums and facilities to do it. 5 are in the Pac-12. You got the Arizonas, UCLA, Washington, and Oregon, the top half of the Pac-12. Then you have 8 from the SEC, 8. Arkansas, which, by the way, shout out to their first SEC championship ever in school history. Love that. I love firsts, because the goal to me is always like we knock off all these firsts so that we don't have firsts anymore. Like now everyone's breaking barriers, and anytime that happens, I love it. But anyway, there's also Alabama, Florida, Georgia, LSU, Tennessee, Kentucky, and Missouri, who is back and eligible for postseason play after being suspended last year. Then there's 3 ACC teams. You got Clemson, who has just been phenomenal, Florida State, Virginia Tech, 2 or 3 from the Big 12, actually, Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, and Texas. I mean, kind of the standard. And then you have Michigan representing the Big 10. So for me, I like to see the teams that host because they earned it and they know they did. They have the seed and they find out in the moment during the selection show. Videos of those moments are always the best. But a lot of these teams probably would have hosted anyway, right? But it's just another thing that's a little bit different this year and may not be as surprising or quite as exciting come selection show. But frankly, at least we have postseason softball at all this year. I'm just happy about that. And all the games will be on the ESPN family of networks, which is huge. And they've been doing that more and more over these last years, but we just didn't have anything like that when I played. It was only Super Regionals and the World Series. So this kind of exposure still floors me sometimes, but it's great. So for pro softball, Athletes Unlimited also had some announcements. Lots of exciting stuff. They announced some of the returners, people that are coming back for season 2 by position, and there's a ton. So I'll just highlight some past guests on this show. For pitchers, you got the reigning champ. You got Kat Osterman, Danielle O'Toole. Catchers, there's Erica Piancastelli and Sachelle Palacios. Infield, you got Hannah Flippin, Tori Vidalis. Outfield, you got people like Victoria Hayward and Morgan Howe. I'm just so proud of them. I mean, they made history last fall in such a weird time for the world in the inaugural season. And 7 out of the 8 people I just mentioned are all going to the Olympics this summer too. So this will be after that. They'll be representing USA, Mexico, Canada, Italy, 4 of the 6 teams. And I can't wait to see what year 2 brings. It's going to run from August 29th to September 27th. Keep an eye out. I know I'm pumped. But there's also ways that they're adding new players to the league that they also announced. So it's going to be a little different. They're going to have their first ever collegiate draft. It's on May 10th, 8 p.m. Eastern on Facebook Live. They're going to announce 12 eligible NCAA players invited to join the league. And it's going to be announced by either a player executive committee member, the champ, Kat Osterman, board member Jessica Mendoza, Danielle Laurie, who did the broadcast last year, or some other guests like Lauren Chamberlain, Amanda Scarborough, Natasha Watley, which are all amazing. And it's cool because this is the only league where players have full control of who gets to be a part of it, right? Like that's not a commonplace thing. So I love that we're already seeing growth from year 1 to year 2 on things that they're expanding on. And in addition to that, they're also having open tryouts June 25th to 26th for elite players in Rosemont. You just have to be 18 years or older. And I've always liked the idea of open tryouts because there are so many diamonds in the rough out there. And AU is such an I can mentality and vibe about it. And I think this is aligned with that. Like, anyone can do it. Like, show up, show us what you got, right? So I love that. And someone who watched the entire Athletes Unlimited season with me last year and still watches all of my broadcasts and all the games now is today's guest. So let's head into the interview. She's my lifelong advocate and life coach. Been watching softball for over 25 years, but has been keeping me in check for 30. It's my mom, a softball mom, Marie Becerra. Hi, Mama.
Hi. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy to have you. Are you excited? You've been giving me a really hard time. You're finally being asked to be on the podcast.
I'm way excited.
Well, and you're going to have video, unlike Dad when he was on the podcast in season 1. So that's a win for you.
That's right. Because we just keep advancing and advancing, huh? You doing your podcast, you're just adding more things to it. It's great.
Well, are you saying it's also getting better because you're better than Dad?
No, that's not actually what I'm saying. It's getting better just because we've been able to add so much more, adding the video, adding music, all of that just makes it so much more entertaining. Not that you're not entertaining enough, you always are for me, but for your other viewers and listeners.
Okay, fine. Well, yeah, I think Dad would be happy that you brought up the music since he's the one who wrote it. So I don't know if the listeners even know that, but yes, my dad wrote the music for Bleav in Softball. It's called Dirt in the Skirt. Fun fact.
Yes, a very fun fact.
But Mother's Day is coming up, Mom, and I feel like a lot of Mother's Days over the years have been spent doing something softball related, and here we are again on the podcast doing it. So how do you feel about that?
I think it's great. I grew accustomed to spending my Mother's Day doing softball with you, and it was great. Every moment of it was just great.
Well, I remember in college too, like we would have Pac-12 series games on Mother's Day. And I actually remember one year in particular making you a card at the hotel in Oregon with just like computer paper and some of my highlighters and giving it to you because you and Dad came to watch.
Yep, you sure did. There was a little bit of flashback to grammar school, huh? You couldn't have any time to get away, and so you went ahead and just made me a card, which those are the best kind. All moms love homemade cards.
But making cards runs in the family because Grandpa used to make me just all kinds of cards with glitter, stickers, everything growing up. So I guess that's where I get it from.
Yes, that's definitely where you get it from. That's where you get your emojis from too. You know, your grandfather uses stickers, and when I showed him what an emoji was, he's like, well, those are just like stickers. So yes, you definitely get it from him.
That's true. He did think that they were, and we were like, please don't put them on your new cell phone.
That's right.
But as I was thinking about doing this episode with you, I couldn't forget, Mom, your look at my games back in the day. You had that like wide, flimsy visor, the fanny pack, the Birkenstocks, like the Bluetooth earpiece. And I used to make fun of you for all of it. And now I wear 3 out of 4 of those things on a daily basis.
You sure do. You sure do. It makes it a lot more convenient at the field.
Well, did you ever tell me I told you so about that? I can't remember.
I don't believe I did. I think you were the one that told me that you were turning into me because look at all these things that you're doing now that you think are cool that you didn't think was cool when I was doing them.
Yeah.
So.
And for everyone wondering, the 3 out of 4 things I do wear is fanny pack, Birkenstocks, and I have AirPods. So that's basically a Bluetooth earpiece if you think about it. So the only thing I didn't get was the flimsy visor thing that you used to wear.
Yep.
But okay. You had that. Dad had a ponytail mullet, so you guys were quite the duo at the softball field.
Yes, we were.
And anyone who knew us back then or who listened to Dad's episodes last year knows about the mullet and that he was my coach. And he coached my teams in rec ball and a little bit in travel ball in the beginning. But then he was really my personal coach in high school and college. So while Dad was the coach in the equation, what do you feel like your role was while I was playing softball?
Well, in your younger years, my role was kind of a dugout mom, where the you girls just loved the cheers, okay? And I did all the cheers with you, and I was just as silly as you guys were. And if anybody got a scratch or a boo boo, we took care of it, you know. So that was the role in the younger years. But then when you got up to where you were playing travel ball, and even into college, it was a lot of managing your school stuff and your softball stuff. When I say managing, in the terms of what a mom would do, I think that it's very important, and you know this, but I'll share it with your viewers, that you keep a balance. I think the best softball players aren't the ones that are out there 24/7 practicing softball. They're the ones that have balance in their life. When you're a kid, you still get to be a kid. You may not get to do everything you want to do, but boy, it's really important to do all the important stuff, like in high school, going to prom and grad night and Disneyland and all that stuff. Those are once in a lifetime experiences. And one day or one evening or whatever away from softball doesn't change all the hard work you do, as long as you have been doing the hard work.
Yeah, that's true because I never missed anything big. Like, sure, I missed like plenty of, hey, my friends are hanging out and going to parties or whatever, but I never missed anything like prom or graduation or grad night. Any of the things you just said. I remember getting on a plane straight from grad night, getting off the bus at like 6 a.m. and flying straight to Virginia for a qualifying tournament for travel ball. But I didn't miss it. I still did it. And you were a big reason. Dad was aware of that stuff, but you were really the one who was pushing to make sure that those things happened.
Yes, and what was astonishing is here you were up all night, grad night at Disneyland, and hopped on that plane and went to Virginia. And in that qualifier, you played some of the best ball you've ever played. So, that in itself is a little bit of proof that if you allow the balance, and even your travel ball coach at that time said, don't miss prom, don't miss grad night, yeah, we have a qualifier. Yes, I want you there, but go ahead and do those things. And that balance, I think, is what contributes to the greatness.
Yeah, that's very true. I mean, I think that's very true for me. And I actually got better at that over the years. And a lot of that was your help too. But every time I think back to what our general schedule was during that time, and I say our because you and Dad were driving me to these travel ball tournaments. We were going all over the place every weekend to Orange County. Nationals were in Oklahoma City. It was usually my birthday I was spending out of state for nationals and tournaments. But then you got to go to Hawaii my sophomore year when we had our first preseason tournament there.
Yay to me. Yep, yep. I sure did. I sure
But
did.
that
We
that
tried to go
was
to everything, but it's difficult, you know. Um, I think you always had at least one parent there, and most of the time, you were fortunate enough to have both of us there. But Hawaii was one. It's whoever has the most vacation time is the one that gets to go. Whether it was your dad or me, or he did a lot of the qualifiers and stuff with you in Colorado, and I had to stay behind and work, but. We always had somebody there for you, always one of us.
yeah, and I didn't really realize that not everybody had that until like way later. So I was really lucky for that reason. But I do remember you and Dad kind of like making a deal. Like he got to go to some of the tournaments because he had the vacation time, and maybe it was a recruiting tournament like the Colorado ones. So you were the one who got to go to Hawaii, and it was a big deal. And we got to
I had
hang out.
never been. Yeah, I had never been to Hawaii, and it felt like a mother daughter weekend because of that. The primary focus was softball, and it's kind of hard to be able to do other things, but we worked a few things in, and made it as fun as we could. And that's what we did on your when you were playing on your birthday. We always worked in a birthday celebration for you. There was always a cake, and you had an instant party because you had a whole team. So you used to count the places that you've spent your birthday, which was interesting. It's something that a lot of kids don't get.
Yeah, another thing to add to the list that I don't really think I knew was weird at the time because it's all I really knew. But I think the fact that I didn't know it was weird was also because of like you and dad, and especially you making sure that those things happened. But now that I'm in the working world and trying to balance a bunch of things myself, I really have no idea how you and dad were able to like work full time all week and do everything on all the weekends and take your time off. I mean, we didn't do vacations. Our vacations were the tournaments. Like,
That's right. We tried to work in, when we got done with the tournament on the tail end. That's when we tried to work in some fun stuff to make it like a vacation. But when you got to the travel ball part of it, it's every weekend and you're gone. So, and it is difficult, but it takes a team. It takes a team. You had to do your part. Your dad did his part in practicing with you and coaching you, and I did my part to make sure everything went smoothly, and so that you could do the other things that were also important. And the most important is the academics, the schoolwork. You probably remember that one of the things that we were able to avoid was ever having you do homework in the car. I was
yes.
not a fan of the homework in the car thing. I'd rather you take a nap on the way home and then feel a little more refreshed and then do your homework. But you had teammates that played on SoCal travel teams that came from Northern California, and that simply was not an option for them. They had to do their homework in the car. It's a long way to go for travel ball, but you were lucky. You didn't have to.
Well, good thing too because I get car sick, so I don't know what I would have done. Like I remember even in college when we would like once in a while we'd drive down and do a road trip for a SoCal tournament coming from Stanford, and like I think for Fullerton in particular. And most of the rest of the team was doing homework, and some of them had classes together, so they were working together and studying and stuff. But I was always just napping because I was like I can't do it. So that was my excuse anyway.
Well, you probably get that from me. I can't read in the car. Some people can. I can't do it. It makes me car sick, and so you work around it. It's a trade off. So you got a little nap in, and you're going to be up a little later, but it all comes out in the wash. So it's whatever works for your family. Now but for the families that have multiple children, and they're all playing different sports, it's a lot more difficult, a lot more difficult. But from what I saw, a lot of parents told me we just try to make sure one parent's with this kid and one's with that one, and they would switch off and that type of thing to try to be there to see the games and give the support.
Yeah, and I think with all of these years, I always think of it sort of as like three different parts of softball that we did. It was sort of rec ball, travel ball, and then college. And then you could throw high school in there too, but that was a way different experience. That was also a lot more straightforward. Like it was a very short season in the spring. It was just different. And you get recruited from travel ball, so there was a lot more time spent there. But I know I have a lot of memories from all of those times. Like you're reminding me of some with like travel ball already, but why don't I guess we can go in order. For rec ball, you mentioned that you were kind of like the team mom, the dugout mom, which is
Mhm.
true. I remember that. By the way, you did the cheers with us. I do remember that. What's your favorite cheer?
Oh gosh, there were so many good ones. There were some that what one that I remember the most is one that they stopped letting you guys do. And I think you remember what one that is. But I don't think we should probably do it on your podcast. But there were so many cute ones. I don't know that I had a favorite. I think I liked all of them. I always thought it was really cute because some of the girls had younger brothers and they would do the cheers and the dads would be kind of aghast that, oh my gosh, they're doing the girls cheers, but
Yeah.
it's fun and it's supposed to be fun. And I think for girls that they have to like each other. They have to bond, more so than boys do in baseball. And that cheering is very much a part of it. It's very much a part of getting pumped up, of being a team, and it's one of the really wonderful things about softball.
I think it's one of the things too, like in recent years, just as softball has picked up more and more steam, like on TV. So many people, for some people who maybe don't know the game as well, they might find baseball a little bit boring because it moves slower. It doesn't have stuff like that in it. But then they turn on softball and they're like, what are these cheers? These like dugout rally cap props with like the banana phones and like all kinds of stuff. So it is definitely something that's pretty unique to softball that I really enjoyed growing up. And I think I heard one of the ones I heard recently. I heard a college team do it. I can't remember who, but they did the "I said a boom, chicka boom, hit
Yes,
that
that
softball
was,
to the moon." That was one of them, and I hadn't heard that since way back then.
yeah, yeah. And the cheers too. I think for for the girls anyway, for the female players, it helps keep them loose. It helps them not take themselves so seriously. Softball is a sport where you can really overthink it, and I think things like that just take a little bit of that tension off, and so that you can relax. And when players are a little more relaxed, that's when their play really rises to another level.
Yeah, I mean, when we were 7, I don't know if we were thinking about that necessarily, but it is something that as you grow up, I remember we used to talk about it sometimes. My college teammates like to remember the little girl who loved the game, so you do think back to stuff like that
Yeah,
when you try to just kind of simplify everything.
right.
But there were also times when I was a little bit younger, not 7, definitely not that young, where you did have to like mediate between me and dad. And
Oh gosh.
you'd pick me up from practice. I'd be like crying. Usually it was pitching practice. It was kind of rare
Yeah.
if it was like fielding or hitting, but it was usually that.
I don't ever recall it being fielding or hitting. It was always pitching practice. And you're like quite a few other young ladies who had a coach for a dad, a real coach for a dad. And it's just an element that goes with the territory. And I think for the mom, it's best to just remember that's kind of a common thing. You'll hear a lot of daughters of coaches and coaches who have daughters talk about it can get strained a little bit during practice. But yes, there were plenty of times that I went up to the field. You'd be up there practicing with your dad, and I'd go get my little girl from the circle, take her hand, and we'd go home.
Yeah.
And because uh, we're all human beings, and sometimes you have a bad day. Sometimes you would have a bad day. Not sick, not anything like that. It's just some days you're just not 100%. And the best thing is to just bag it for that day and come back the next day feeling a lot better, a lot more refreshed. And uh, moms can look out for that kind of thing and tell when their kid is kind of tired or kind of burned out or stressed because they have a whole bunch of homework and but yet they're out there practicing. There's all kinds of factors that can come into it, and balancing it really it helped you a lot for us to do that.
Yeah, it did. Because I also realized later in life, when you're a kid, you also think your parents are perfect. But like sometimes dad could have a bad day too, like he's also human. So, and maybe we both have a bad day on the same day sometimes, and then that would happen. Or maybe all three of us had a bad day and then it was just a mess. But, like the important thing though was that after that would happen, there would always be some sort of resolution though. And you would
Yes,
often be like the facilitator of that, but like dad and we'd be okay later,
yes,
like
yes.
it doesn't have to be like this huge permanent blowout either.
Yeah, and I would say that oftentimes it wouldn't take but a few minutes afterwards for your dad to realize himself that, okay, maybe I'm having a bad day, maybe she's having a bad day. And he always would make sure to give you a hug and let you know that that's just practice. It's not everything about your relationship with him. He was pretty good about that, even at times when you two butted heads.
Yeah. But the other thing of speaking of butting heads that I always remember too, this is a big one. And this is actually involves more you than me, which was like the driving directions to
Oh
get
my.
to all the tournaments. Because this was before like Google Maps and like GPS and all this stuff. This was like MapQuest. So you printed out the directions, you'd be, telling dad where to go. And I think anyone can relate, like any family can relate to the arguments that come from directions.
I would say most of our arguments came from directions, because oftentimes the directions would be wrong. And I'm just reading what's there and telling your dad, and he knows that it's wrong. And so, yeah, there was a lot of back and forth about directions. Yep, no doubt about it. I think it's probably a little better now because you can map things on your phone, and I think it's a lot more accurate than it was back in the day. But yeah, that was a big one because you're trying to get down there. You want to make sure you're early. Don't we never wanted you to feel rushed, that kind of thing. So instead, we'd argue about the directions and stress you out that way.
Well, I don't know if you're going to get mad at me for bringing this up on this, but just the one time where you actually did get out of the car and walk back to the field because we were driving between one field to another field for our games in a tournament. Like it happened to get moved. And then we went back to the other field after that. And you knew that was going to happen. You knew we were coming back. So you got out of the car, threw the directions at dad, and walked back to the other field.
Yes, I did. Not a smart thing, not my greatest moment. We're in a town that we don't really know our way around. Not too smart to get out of the car. But in all fairness, we could see the field that I walked back
Yeah.
to. We weren't even very far away.
Right.
And I
Yeah.
knew that if you won your game at the other field, that you would be coming back. And, in all honesty, Dad and I probably just needed a little break.
Yeah. It
And
happens. And
you went, you pitched that game, you did great, you guys won, and you came back to that field that I was at. So it all
well,
worked out.
that's probably one of the very few games that you ever actually didn't see me play in some way. Really,
Yeah.
because you were pretty much at like all the other ones. Or if in college we didn't, it was before we had the live streams and all this TV coverage, you'd watch like Game Tracker or something. But you would always be like watching. That's like one of the very few times that you did it.
Yeah, not my finest moment. It really wasn't. But I knew you were okay. You were with your dad. We didn't have much time to get you to the next field. The games were like back to back.
Yeah.
So it was actually better, probably not a good idea to get out of the car, but better for dad to just go on and take you at that
Yeah.
moment, you
Yeah.
know?
Well, there was other times when that wasn't a problem, like later on. Like remember with the Raiders and Phil Bruder when I played on that team. He was the most superstitious person I've probably ever met in my life. So he would have all the parents drive in the exact same order from the hotel to the field. So that made life a little bit easier because if someone made a wrong turn, then everybody made a wrong turn.
Yeah, that's once you're down there and you're going to the field. Yeah.
Yeah.
He did do that, but it was only if you guys were winning. If you were
Yeah.
winning was when
Right.
he got really superstitious. And if you guys went out and you had a really good game and you won like the first game out, then whatever order we were in leaving the hotel, he's like, you have to be in the same order. We have to, each car's got to be in the same order. I don't know. I like superstitions, so I didn't think it was all that crazy. But
Well, that works out because your daughter chose a sport that's very superstitious. So at least you
yes,
were on
we
board
do.
because some parents would probably be like, really, and like just not do it. So, oh man. But I also remember you washing uniforms. Like we'd play, four, maybe five games in a day in travel ball days, and then have to wear that uniform the next day. So you'd have to like wash it and you'd do it for me, which like that was also a balance is making me do most things on my own. So I'd be independent, but I also couldn't do it all. Right. So you would help
Yeah.
out with things like that. But I remember that always being an adventure, like trying to figure out how to help the uniform dry in time to wear it for the next day.
Yeah, I was either hanging it over the heater in the winter or hanging it over the air conditioner. And oftentimes, a lot of hotels didn't have a washer and dryer. And, after 4 or 5 games, your uniform was filthy. And if I didn't have laundry soap, which oftentimes I brought some, I would use the shampoo and the cream rinse that the hotel provided and literally wash your uniform in the sink and hang it up. The
Yeah.
kind of material that the uniforms are, they tend to dry pretty well. But yeah, that was definitely a thing. I remember on one of your visits for college, you were so excited because they washed the uniforms for you guys. You didn't realize that in college, you're not going to have to do it yourself. They do it for you. You thought
Yeah.
that was just the greatest thing.
Well, yeah, that was like my first college visit too.
Yes.
So, and then they were like, "This is where you deposit your laundry." I was like, "What?" Yeah, I forgot about that.
Yeah.
That's true too. But laundry became a little bit of a thing in college too, because I just struggled with laundry, I guess. It just wasn't my thing. So you would help, like, when I'd be overwhelmed, like trying to do homework and like before games as well, like trying to get ready for those, trying to do all this stuff at the same time. If you were in town, you'd help and do some of my laundry. But the biggest memory of that was when I was very, very first on my own my freshman year in college. My roommate was super nice and didn't care, but I had like a huge pile of dirty clothes because we had gotten all these Nike, like what we called Nike Christmas, gotten all of that stuff, and I hadn't gone through all of them yet. So I just kept going before washing it, and then you ended up helping me.
Yeah, I remember that very distinctly. And ended up helping you was about 8 loads of laundry because we didn't come up, I don't think, for the first couple of months before we came up and saw you your freshman year. And it was like, oh no. But you're right. That's even another part of the balancing that happens even in the college years. Okay, being a student athlete, I think from watching you go through it and talking to other parents is one of the hardest ways to go to college. It is not easy uh, because you're either playing or you're in class or you're doing homework, and there's so little time for much else than that. And so I did. If you were really bogged down with homework, and sometimes it wouldn't even be that. It would be you were up really late the night before cramming, for a midterm or whatever, and so you didn't get much sleep. Oftentimes, I tell you, come to the hotel with me and Dad, bring your laundry, and either catch up on your sleep or catch up on your homework, and we'll just throw it in at the hotel because by then a lot of the hotels had washers and
Yeah.
dryers, 4, 5, 6,
Yeah.
and you didn't have near the laundry that you had your freshman year. But it's little ways that um, moms can help that I think make a really big difference. I would bring you care packages like stuff that had shampoo and deodorant and toiletry stuff and I say, you out of any of this? And you would look through the box. You go, no, I'm good. Or, oh yeah, I need that. And so I always kept a box of just toiletries type stuff, because
Yeah.
just for you to get to the store to get something, what would be a monumental thing when you're trying to be a student athlete, when you're playing a sport and you're trying to go to school. It's like every minute, every little piece that can be saved is really precious, so
Yeah.
um, but it was fun. I enjoyed doing it. It was my way of helping, and it does. It takes a team. It really does. It's the family support is a big part of it as well. But all the achievements and all the success belongs to the student athlete.
It does. Yeah, but it's hard to imagine that it would have been to the same level without the support. It's like maybe I could have done some of it on my own, but it wouldn't have been the same without you and without dad.
Right? Yeah.
And I think that's true for any student athlete. I mean, whether it's their parents or someone else important in their life, could be grandparents, could be, godparents, could be aunts and uncles, whatever, just whoever those people are.
Right. Whoever your support system is, yeah,
Yeah.
it plays a big role.
Yeah. Because the other big thing, speaking of like studying and all that stuff, I think every single finals week, and Stanford was on the quarter system, so that meant 3 finals weeks a year, not just 2 for you that you had to deal with me. But I'd probably call with like some sort of freak out phone call, like later at night that you had to deal with.
Yes. Stanford and probably a lot of other universities as well had a really nice way of kind of giving parents a heads up that that's going to happen, that it's almost a guarantee. And every athlete's parent that I talked to said that their daughter did the same thing. Okay. Yeah, they said they're going to call you and they're going to be all freaked out, and you're going to want to jump in and fix it. You're going to want to jump in right away and fix it. And then 2 days later, you're going to tell them, okay, I helped you, I fixed it. And fixed what? It wasn't even that big a deal, So you get accustomed to it after the first year, getting that call at like 2 a.m., that meltdown. I can't think straight anymore. I've been trying to figure this out for 4 hours, and but I think for you anyway, what worked was just talking you down, getting you to relax, and let's think it through. Let's bounce it off each other. The very first one, your dad struggled very hard with. It was like, oh my gosh, we have to do something. And I said, let's just wait and see how this plays out. But we took those calls. That's the only time you did it, was
Yeah.
during midterms. We didn't get 2 a.m. calls other than that, unless
Yeah. Right.
unless it was an accident because the phone was in your pocket. That happened too. But
Yeah, that's true because Stanford had late night on campus where they had like food at the dining halls open till 2 a.m. So sometimes my friends and I or my teammates and I would go do that. We'd be up late studying, so we'd go and I'd probably accidentally butt dial you on the
yeah.
way.
What about taking finals on the road in a
Yeah,
hotel?
we had to do that a few times. Not always, like, but there were a couple times, like I think I did a midterm on the road, maybe a final on the road too. Sometimes you have to work with your professors to, if it's not possible schedule wise, to make something up somehow, and figure it out. But they also didn't let you just use your tough student athlete schedule as an excuse either. They were like, I remember one time I asked for an extension on a paper, and he was like, "Sorry, but your softball schedule isn't enough for me to give you an extension." And I was like, "Okay, it feels like enough, but all right."
But you were able to get tutoring or help when you needed it, because they do respect the fact that I think a student athlete is like going to college and working. It,
Yeah,
it really is. Even though it's a sport, it's tied to your scholarship, all that. It's like a job,
yeah,
it really is. And so, because these institutions understand that you're doing double duty, that's what
yeah,
your dad likes to call it, double duty. You need not preferential treatment, and I
No.
don't see it that way, but you need to be able to get the resources because you don't have as much time. Remember, you told me once, you said, I could get straight A's in college if I had enough time,
Yeah.
you know? Yeah.
Yeah.
So,
I still got A's and B's for the record.
yes, you did.
Yeah.
Yes,
I
you did.
actually thought I handled that pretty well because that was a thing at Stanford too, where they were like, most people aren't used to getting B's if you got into Stanford. Like, be prepared that you may get a B, like Stanford's really hard. And I actually think I like set my expectations pretty well for that, which probably
Well,
sounds obnoxious to some people, but whatever.
it actually is a thing at Stanford because a lot of the people that come in, um, they've never gotten a B in their entire life.
Yeah.
And even your coaches try to prepare us
Yeah.
for it's going to happen. And I don't know if you remember, but I told you, okay, this is what we're going to do. Your first B, we're going to celebrate. We're going
Yeah.
to celebrate. Yay, you got a B because it's something to get a B at Stanford.
Yeah.
Okay, it really is. Um, Rather than make it this big thing that we're dreading, and you know it's going to happen anyway. You know, and
Yeah.
so I think that kind of just took a lot of the stigma away from it for you.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
It did. It definitely helped. It definitely helped. I think your sanity checks, the phone calls and like stuff like that. And then also it would help during dead week, which is the week before finals week. There was a tradition at Stanford where everyone would just yell at midnight. That's just a thing. I don't know, when that started or whatever, but it was a thing. So you just hear everyone like in all the dorms or wherever you were at just yell to get your frustration out. So between that and between your help, I think it got me through.
And a few jumping in the ponds on campus, right?
Yeah, that's true. The fountain
Yeah,
hopping
the fountain
is
hopping. There you go.
yeah, because that was usually after you were done with finals, especially in like
Right.
the spring. Then you could go hop between the fountains. That was also a Stanford thing. That's very true. But what I want to know is how you got so good at talking people off the ledge, because that's what you did with me.
I I don't know if it's necessarily a got so good at it. It's parenting in general is trial and error. You know, you try this. Oh, if that doesn't work, well, we're going to try something else until you find what works. And of course, when you have your own kids, you start to know how your kid is. And for you, and there are others out there like you, probably especially at a school like Stanford, where I never had to push you. You were always pushing hard enough for everybody. Nobody had to push you. What we learned about you at a very early age was you needed to be pulled back. Pulled back. I mean, any kid who comes home and wants to do extra credit after they got an A plus on a in elementary school, I said, but I want extra credit. It's like there's nothing higher than an A plus, okay? No, you don't need to do this. Um, and that's part of the balancing too, because while the sport is at a high level, the academics can be at a high level, and you got to know when you're doing too much and you go, this isn't really necessary. It reminds me of when you were in high school and you were taking an AP history class, and you already had a few other AP classes, but it was a lot. It was like, okay, you could do it, but you'd never see your friends. You would never have any downtime. You would never have any time to watch a movie ever, and I'm thinking, I asked you, I said, do you want to be a history teacher, at some point? You said, no, I don't think so. I said, okay, I think you're going to drop this AP class. And
Yeah,
you were doing extremely well in it. I think you had an A in the class, but it it wasn't going to have the value that we
yeah,
needed for what it was going to take and what you were going to have to continue to put into it. And taking just that little bit off and going, you know what? You don't have to take all AP classes.
Yeah.
And a lot of parents don't realize that. They think, oh, I got to put my kid in every AP class so they can get into college. Not necessarily. Not necessarily.
Yeah. Because that's one of the biggest things that I think I learned. Now I recognize that that actually has to do with my own like mental health and wellness that you
Yes.
were looking out for. I think at the time it wasn't something that was talked about nearly as much and as extensively and as deeply as it is now. So I don't know
That's
if I at the time really knew that that was it. I knew it was like what would be better for me, but now looking back it's like that was sort of for my like mental health and well-being so that I could
yes.
stay sane. And
Yes.
it's like, because you still want to push yourself, which I did on my own a lot. Like you said, I would needed to be reeled in, if anything. But like, you have to know when to give yourself a break. So that's one of the biggest things I learned from you is like to find the balance between those things, to have compassion for myself too, to
Yes.
be able to tell the difference. Because dad is like very disciplined, all about hard work. And he really instilled that in me, and I'm
Mhm.
super grateful for it. And but I think you brought the part where it's like, okay, but like let's also balance this out so that you're the best whole person that you can be.
Yes. Yes. And I believe it's really important. And I do think it contributed to the success that you had. Um, but it takes work, and you got to be willing to work at it. And but it does pay off, I think, in the long run. It's kind of funny. I remember when you were younger, some of the best softball you ever played, you were sick. And I've teased you about it over the years. I mean, either you were coming down with the flu and had a fever, and not that I made you play with the fever, you were fine when we got to the game, but you started not feeling good. But
Yeah.
what's funny is what I've learned over the years is when you overthink softball, um, you can really mess yourself up.
Yeah.
And I think for you or for anybody, when you're sick, you're thinking, I just got to get through this. You're not overthinking it. I mean, I've seen you hit home runs when I knew you were sick. And it was just like, I don't know how that happens, but it was not overthinking it.
Yeah. Well, that was a big thing you always said too, was about the KISS method. Keep it simple, stupid.
Yeah.
Was always like a thing you would bring up. And sometimes, yeah, I would just, I sometimes maybe I'd be like, well, just pretend I'm sick and see what happens, because it was an easier way to keep it simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
But I think, yeah, you really helped me learn how to trust the process in that too, and like worry less about all these other things going on and a lot of things I couldn't control. But not only trust the process, but like create a process that I could trust,
Right.
meaning like what you just said, like recognizing when, okay, if I hit this certain point, then yes, it's time to take a break or whatever. And that started when I was like 9, when I was it 9 years old that I was studying for the spelling bee at school and I wanted to keep going. And you're like, nope, we're done for the night. Like, that's it. You've studied enough.
Yeah. And you went to that spelling bee, and we saw all kinds of parents in the hallway while we were waiting, just quizzing their kids on words. And you looked at me and you're like, Mom, shouldn't we be going over words? I said, no, because you prepared, and now it's time to just relax and go and trust the work that you did. Isn't that the same as sports? It's the
Yeah.
same thing. You trust that you did the work in practice, and then you go and just execute it in the game.
Yeah. Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's how me and dad used to talk about it too. It's like the game is the test, but studying is practice.
Mhm.
It's like similar between school and sports. But from the time when I was born, or even that 9-year-old studying for the spelling bee all the way through college, and then even now, you still watch all the TV broadcasts I do with Pac-12 networks or the live streams at Stanford. Softball's still there. You can't get away from it.
Oh yeah, and because you went to college, and I think a lot of parents have this. It's not, I'm not trying to live your life, but Stanford became a part of our lives, your college, right? So we love watching other sports from for the institution. You know, it becomes the family alma mater, if you will.
Yeah. Right.
Um, because I think I told you, you know, when you finished softball at Stanford, one of the things I told you was, thank you so much for letting us go on the ride with you. And that's really how I saw it, is it was your ride, but we got front row seats, and it's a once in a lifetime. It was a wonderful, wonderful experience.
Man, I love my mama. I talk to her pretty much every day, so this was really the same as any other day, but we just happened to record it this time. But just throughout everything, she has really been my rock. You know, she let me be me and encouraged me to be accountable and independent, but also kind of magically knew the right balance of support that I needed for my well being. I feel like moms are great that way. But I think anyone in a role like the one she's been in, whether you're a mom, a dad, a grandparent, or whoever, hopefully you listening, you can relate, learn, maybe even just laugh. I know we do about it all the time. So with that, let's transition to the foul tip of the week. This week's foul tip is about your personal board of directors. What does that mean, right? Well, for background, a board of directors is a term from the business world. It's a group of people who jointly supervises the activities of an organization, like at the highest level. So this group of people is invested in the company and they can help guide it, but ultimately the company and the employees are the ones doing the work. So in my first job out of school, out of grad school at LinkedIn, I learned the concept of creating your own personal board of directors. You are the CEO of your life, and there are likely people in your life that you trust and respect that also help guide and mentor you in different ways, right? So if you think of yourself as your own company, it's helpful to think of those people as your personal board of directors. You know, you're the one making decisions and living your life, but they're invested in you and there to help. And if you couldn't tell, my mom is obviously a member of my personal board of directors, one of the chief members, actually. There's my dad, my boyfriend Sam, who's been on the show and is my partner in life, and some of my best friends, some family friends. Whoever you choose and who you look to, it's unique to you. But just know that they are the people, they're just the people that you trust, respect, and learn from. And it's always helpful, of course, if it's a diverse group from different parts of your life. You know, I have family, I have friends, I have professional contacts, and with different backgrounds. You know, my board of directors has socioeconomic statuses all over the spectrum, and I love that. It's better for me. Diverse perspectives and diversity in thought helps you see more and makes you better. And that's why it also makes businesses better too. It's for the same reason. But really, this can also make you a better softball player, a better coach, whatever you're doing in the softball world or whatever you're doing in life. I mean, when I had the most hitting success in my college career, senior year, I've talked about this a little bit before, but it was because I tapped into my board of directors. I took some guidance from each of them, just what felt right to me. I put it all together and I became a better me because of it. And we can all do that. So that's it. Invest in your personal board of directors. That's the foul tip of the week. You've been listening to Bleav in Softball, presented by Bet Online. The show is available anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, wherever else you listen, including Bleav.com. You can also watch the videos on YouTube. So hit that subscribe button, rate the show, write a review, share the episodes, and of course, follow us on Twitter and Instagram at Bleav in Softball. That's BLEAV. You can always reach out to me on Twitter at Jenna Becerra01 and Instagram at Jenna Becerra as well. As always, thank you for joining and catch you soon. Happy Mother's Day.